Quotations from myself, segment 79, quotation number 960. For the past 2000 years, the Jewish dilemma has remained essentially the same. Either to stay where you are now, despite the growing anti-Semitism, hoping it will eventually subside, though never expected it to disappear altogether, or to move someplace else which looked, at least from afar, as a more hospitable at the moment. And the perennial Jewish choice has always been between two or more different brands of anti-Semitism, Spanish or French, French or German, German or Polish, Polish or Ukrainian, Ukrainian or Russian, etc. But the question had always been the same. Which anti-Semitism was more dangerous at the moment, which less, and for how long? So almost every generation of Jews were faced with the same dilemma, and depending on its evaluation of the comparative viciousness of different brands of anti-Semitism, had to make a decision, as their parents and grandparents has done before, on where it would be better and safer to stay or to go. Thus, every time the move was made, it wasn't as it should have been expected from hell to save heaven, but rather out of the frying pan into a fire. And even the state of Israel, created out of the ashes of Holocaust, had proven to be less than a sure sanctuary, for instead of supposed promised land, it turned out to be in truth a 10 million strong Jewish ghetto in the midst of the 100 million resentful and hostile Arabs, forever planning a next pogrom, a tiny island surrounded by the ready-to-swallow-it ocean of hate. Yet it cannot be denied that the latest migratory trend of world population has made at least Europe, the cradle of anti-Semitism, the less dangerous place for the Jews to live, by creating millions of new Jews, for example, Turks in Germany, North Africans in France, Albanians and Yugoslavians in Italy, to name just a few, and thus displacing the old ones as a primary target of hate and persecution. Being one of many made the Jews less visible, which is a good state for any minority to strive for, and the hatred which for centuries had concentrated almost exclusively on them is now shared with others, making it less potent and harmful. The bigots get tired chasing too many victims at once. Thus, unfortunately, somebody else's misery has become a blessing in disguise for the Jews. But as it is, this is the way of the world, to benefit from other loss. And if it is not done intentionally, one can be grateful for it without feeling guilty. (961) The lives of the wise and the prudent, that is, ones who are able, as much as it humanly possible, to foresee the future consequences of their present action, are not, at least on the surface, as eventful or exciting as the lives of those who lived one day at a time, and for whom, no matter how sinister the omens are, the tomorrow is always full of promise of better things to come. The same holds true for history, the life of mankind in general. For the world history as we know it would have been much duller and immeasurably less eventful if for not this notorious inability or refusal of men, both individually and collectively, to see beyond their noses. The modern history in the case of Hitler and Nazi Germany affords us one of the most obvious instances of such myopia, when neither the leader nor the followers in this case were able or willing to acknowledge the virtual impossibility for Germany, no matter how highly developed industrially and strong military it was, to defeat the combined forces of the Western Europe, United States, and Soviet Union. Had they been more foresighted and capable of discerning in advance the hopelessness of their design, the Second World War would have never happened, with its hundreds of large and thousands of small battles, its glorious victory and agonizing defeats, millions of killed and maimed, countries destroyed, cities and villages ruined, etc., etc., which is the stuff that history is made of, and which is going to keep historians busy for centuries to come. And the ancient history is as replete with examples of human folly as the main cause and driving engine of it, as a modern one. Take, for instance, the revolt of Galilean Judea against Rome in 66 AD. Anyone but totally blind could have predicted that this tiny, backward speck of a land in the huge, omnipotent Roman Empire had no have a fighting chance in hell to win this war of liberation. And yet the Jews, against the better judgment of few Pharisees, have joined the revolt en masse. The rest, as they say, is history. The uprising was drowned in rivers of blood. Jerusalem leveled with the ground. The remaining Jews dispersed all over Roman Empire, and the world history had been changed forever. For without all this, Christianity would have never survived to become the world religion. The Crusade, the European history of competing Christian kingdoms, the Renaissance, the Reformation, the list can go on and on, would have never have happened, and the world would be quite a different place today. Thus, as regrettable as it is, either looking back or forward, it is clear that it is not the wise and the prudent, but the short-sighted and reckless who are the creator of history. And as entertaining or educational may be for the outsider, like for example Martians or historians, to look at from the safe distance of space and time, most of this planet's inhabitants, having no means to escape even the choice, would have probably preferred less dramatic, even if not as exciting spectacle, to take a part in. 962. If the society does not allow me to do what I would prefer to, I have to find out what can I still enjoy doing, which does not require its permission. 963. Some spouses see the marriage as a license giving them the exclusive rights to abuse their partners. 964. A life of any individual is divided into at least two main parts. The first is spent in blissful ignorance of one's own mortality, and the second begins with its realization, triggered usually by life-threatening disease or a death of someone very close, like a parent, a relative, or a friend. And from then on, one has to learn to live with this knowledge of the inevitability of one's own death, and yet at the same time, as if being unaware of it. 965. No piece of garbage in trousers, however revolting he may be, would be completely dismissed by a woman hungry for men's attention. And one often wonders if there are any who don't. 966. Most people's role in the greater scheme of things is to be no more than fertilizer for a few selected to flourish. 967. An orgasm is a nice diversion, but a poor substitute for real life. 968. It is not the desire and longings, which are pretty much universal, perverse of all kind being an extremely tiny minority, but the lengths to which one is willing and capable of to go to satisfy them, and the means which are employed in doing so, that ultimately differentiate the people. 969. The type of conversation lacking either generalization or conclusion, which are so prevalent in some predominantly educated upper middle class social circle of North America, resemble by their form and substance the truncated syllogism. For the major premise, the universal general statement, either negative or affirmative, like all men are animals, and the conclusion, either universal or particular, negative or affirmative, like Socrates is an animal, are missing, and the listener has to accept the minor premise, which is affirmation or negation, either universal or particular, like Socrates is a man, as a revealed truth, which provides all the information one will ever need, though in all honesty it is but an empty platitude, devoid of any meaningful content. Amazingly, for an outsider, the conversation consisting of nothing but such platitudes and commonplaces, as long as they are adorned with a perfect grammar and rich vocabulary, are considered by the above-mentioned groups as the only proper way for intelligent, sophisticated people to talk to each other. And anyone would make the inexcusable faux pas when trying to introduce into such conversations the missing parts of the discursive syllogism, generalization and conclusion. Such a person is immediately branded as argumentative and will forever be frowned upon as the undesirable in a polite society. The best advice which could be given to one who doesn't want to become the object of such an ostracism is, forget about wrong or right. Nobody cares, just be polite.